Hi, I'm Clara, and this is a how-to video for crow pose. There's a couple of different ways of coming into crow, and I'm going to show you, I feel like, the quote-unquote easiest way to come into it in terms of getting yourself up, though it can be a little bit scarier because you go a little bit higher with your hips. So you'll want to grab a block, ideally a firm block. You're going to put it on its lowest height, and then you're going to crouch onto the block. So you're going to put the balls of your feet and your toes on the block and take your knees out to the sides. Put your hands on the ground almost as wide as the mat out in front of you, so not too close to the block, but out in front. With all arm balances, you want to be able to lean forward into the arm balance. It makes it easier in terms of weight distribution, and then that way you don't have to use as much arm strength. Claw the mat with your finger pads, so you're splaying out your fingers out wide, and then imagine that you're trying to turn your fingernails white, claw the mat with your finger pads, and then lift your booty up towards the sky with your knees bent. From here, bend your elbows towards the back of your mat and take your knees to your upper arms. Ideally as high up towards the armpits as they can go. And then squeeze your knees, your upper arms towards each other. Keep your booty high, look forward, and then shift the weight forward so you feel a whole lot more weight in your hands. Hug the belly button in and up, and then puff up the back body with your breath. Feel free to stay exactly as you are, or try to lift one foot up off the ground. Put that foot back down on the block, lift the other foot up. If that checks out okay, lean forward. I like to go up a little bit higher with my knees. Lean forward, shift the weight forward, try to lift 1 or 2 feet up off the block. That checks out okay. Press your knees into your upper arms, hollow out the back body, puff it up and hug the belly button in and up. And then from here, look back and bring your feet back down to the block. So that's one way of doing it. And that I find is the easiest way of taking your knees as high up to your upper arms as possible, because you're using the block to bring your knees up a little bit higher. So another way of doing it, same idea, except without the block. Palms out in front of you. Bring your big toes to touch. Claw the mat with your finger pads. Lift your butt up high. Bend your elbows, right? And we want to, as we bend the elbows, hug the elbows in towards each other. And when you take your knees to your upper arms, you want to hug your knees in towards your upper arms, in towards the center line. The more that we do that, hugging both the knees and the upper arms, the more we engage the core, which is going to make it a whole lot easier to balance, yeah? The next point that you want to really focus on is your drishti, your gaze point. It's they call it the third point of balance. You want to look forward, quite a bit far forward, so that you're envisioning that you're trying to take your heart and your eyes forward, and that'll again make you a little bit lighter to lift up. So again, knees up nice and high, bend the elbows, take knees to upper arms. So I'm looking forward, as far forward as I can, hug the belly button in and up, come on to tippy toes. Hollow out the belly by hugging in, right? And if that checks out okay, maybe 1 or 2 feet up off the ground. Take your time with this. Keep clawing the mat with your finger pads. Breathe, always a good thing to do. When you're ready to come down, lean back, bring your feet back down to the ground. Next point that you can do it is some people get a little bit nervous about face planting. So what you can do is you can actually use a block to put your head on the block to rest. So that could be the third point of balance. So I would recommend taking it on its second height out in front of you, palms on the ground. Take your knees to your upper arms. From here, bend your elbows, and you're going to bring your forehead down to the block. So I realize that that is a little too low for me. So I'm going to come up a little bit higher. Shifting the weight forward, I'm looking forward. I'm literally going to put my forehead on the block, puff up the back body. If that checks out okay, 1 foot up off the ground, other foot up off the ground. And so you're balancing by pressing your forehead into the block and coming out that way. 3 different ways of doing crow pose. Biggest thing you want to remember for your hands, if you ever start to feel stuff in your wrist when you're arm balancing, it means that you're pressing down too hard into the palm of the hand, specifically right by the wrist. You want to try to evenly distribute the weight between the balls of the fingers, so meaning at the palm at the base, right, as well as down here. If you're feeling it specifically in the wrist, it means you're pressing too far down into the lower part of the palm. Claw mat with finger pads. I imagine that I'm trying to shift the weight forward so that ideally a lot of the weight or my body is kind of over where my where my knuckles are versus where the bottom of my palm is. Claw the mat like you got little suction cups on your hands, trying to get the middle part of your palm to lift up. That'll activate your forearms, which is really going to help with this. I hope that helped.